Have you ever found yourself becoming a mirror in your relationships? Reflecting back everything your partner is, thinks, and feels until you look in and wonder where you went? What happens when giving your all silently transforms into giving yourself away, leaving your own needs unheard and your identity lost in translation? Ever feel like modern love is less a romantic ideal and more a complex algorithm, constantly recalculating as you navigate endless data points? Like you're caught in a perpetual loop of choices, trying to find a connection that actually sticks in a world buzzing with alternatives? This is where we dive in. At Love Threads, we don't just talk about relationships, we deconstruct them. We blend authentic, grounded insights with robust, evidence-based psychology, giving you the real intelligence on why we connect, why we sometimes misstep, and how to truly thrive when love feels like a constantly shifting landscape. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the codependency trap. This isn't merely about being supportive. It's a deeply ingrained pattern where an individual consistently loses themselves within a relationship, endlessly prioritizing their partner's needs and well-being over their own. We'll explore how this dynamic often stems from unmet emotional needs and insecure attachment, the crucial concept of self-differentiation, and the absolute necessity of establishing healthy boundaries. Ultimately, this episode is about charting a course to reclaim your identity and build truly reciprocal, nourishing connections. The echo of self-erasure. Imagine a vibrant individual, once known for their passions, their independent spirit, and their unique spark. In every relationship, this person undergoes a subtle transformation. They pick up their partner's hobbies, adopt their partner's opinions, even mimic their partner's way of speaking. If their partner is an avid hiker, suddenly hiking becomes their new favorite pastime, even if they secretly prefer cozy evenings with a book. If their partner is going through a difficult time at work, this individual's own mood mirrors their partner's distress, neglecting their own deadlines and social life to be constantly available. Their calendar is filled not with their own appointments, but with reminders of their partner's schedule, commitments, and emotional needs. They feel an intense, almost overwhelming responsibility for their partner's happiness and well-being, believing that if their partner is unhappy, it is a direct reflection of their own failure. This person's identity becomes a blurry reflection in their partner's eyes, and their self-worth is tethered to their partner's approval and perceived contentment. There's a quiet despair underneath it all, a whispered question, who am I when I'm not doing something for them? Then there's the story of another individual who is drawn to partners who are struggling, who seem to need saving or fixing. This person is the first to offer help, the last to leave when things get tough, and often the only one pushing for solutions. Their relationships are often characterized by drama and crisis because this is where they feel most valuable, most needed. When a partner faces a career setback, this individual takes on the emotional burden, spending hours strategizing, comforting, and sometimes even doing the work for them. When their partner's emotions run high, this individual absorbs them, often suppressing their own feelings to maintain a semblance of calm for their partner. They interpret their partner's struggles as their own personal mission, believing that their love and effort can single-handedly rescue them from any difficulty. This person's greatest fear is not being needed, because without that central role of rescuer, they feel purposeless, invisible. This dynamic often leaves them exhausted, resentful, and utterly depleted, while their partners may remain stuck, unconsciously relying on this person's endless support rather than developing their own resilience. And consider a third individual who, from a young age, learned that their own needs and feelings were secondary or even a burden. Perhaps they grew up in a chaotic household where emotional expression was met with dismissal, or where a parent struggled with addiction or illness, demanding constant care and attention. As an adult, this early conditioning manifests as a deep-seated belief that they must anticipate and meet others' needs before their own, often without even being asked. They are master people pleasers, constantly scanning their environment for cues of discomfort or displeasure in others, and then acting swiftly to alleviate it. In relationships, this looks like saying yes when they desperately want to say no, agreeing to plans that drain them, or stifling their opinions to maintain harmony. They might internalize their partner's anxieties or desires so deeply that they genuinely believe these are their own feelings. This individual avoids conflict at all costs, fearing that expressing a differing opinion or a personal need might lead to rejection or abandonment. They live in a constant state of self-negation, their voice becoming quieter and quieter until it's barely a whisper, even to themselves. Deeper dive into psychological roots. These powerful narratives illuminate the complex landscape of codependency, revealing its intricate psychological roots. At its core, codependency often stems from deeply unmet emotional needs experienced in early life. Imagine a childhood where expressions of vulnerability were met with dismissal, inconsistency, or even punishment. In such environments, a developing person might learn that their emotional safety depends not on expressing their authentic self, but on anticipating and managing others' emotional landscapes. This is a survival strategy designed to ensure connection and avoid abandonment. Therapeutic approaches focusing on emotional connection highlight how this profound yearning for closeness, often left unaddressed in formative years, can drive an individual to suppress their true self. The result is a relational dynamic where one's worth becomes intricately tied to their ability to keep others happy or stable. This fundamental relational pattern, explored across decades of empirical research on relationship stability, emphasizes how early emotional experiences create an internal working model of relationships that continues to play out in adulthood, shaping expectations and behaviors, often without conscious awareness. This internal model dictates how we perceive ourselves, our partners, and the world of relationships. This deep-seated pattern is often linked to the development of insecure attachment styles, particularly anxious attachment. Individuals with an anxious attachment style, often shaped by inconsistent caregiving, become hypervigilant to signs of distance or rejection. In adult relationships, this translates into a constant quest for validation and reassurance, a desperate attempt to secure the bond. This manifests as people-pleasing, an inability to say no, and an almost obsessive focus on the partner's mood and needs. The nervous system, constantly on high alert for perceived threats to the connection, learns to prioritize the partner's emotional state, believing that by managing the partner's feelings, they can control the stability of the relationship and avoid the pain of abandonment. This relentless striving for external validation, fueled by an internal working model that doubts one's own lovability or another's reliability, keeps the codependent trapped in a cycle of self-negation. The brain's very wiring for love, influenced by these early experiences, creates neural pathways that prioritize external validation or caretaking roles, making these patterns feel almost automatic. This biological and emotional wiring means that the pull towards codependency can feel incredibly strong, almost like a compulsion, as the body and mind seek familiar, albeit unhealthy, ways to regulate perceived threats to connection. This neural blueprint, established in formative years, makes it genuinely challenging to break free, as it's akin to retraining deeply rooted pathways in the brain. The constant search for security in external relationships, rather than an internal sense of self-worth, perpetuates the cycle. This leads directly to a profound lack of self-differentiation. Imagine, as explored in various family systems theories, the individual's identity is so enmeshed with their partners that the boundaries between me and you become blurred. Emotional reactivity is high. One might absorb a partner's anger, sadness, or anxiety so completely that they genuinely feel these emotions as their own, losing sight of their distinct emotional experience. This blurring extends beyond emotions to thoughts and actions. A codependent individual might find it difficult to hold a differing opinion, make independent decisions, or pursue personal interests without feeling guilt or fear of disapproval from their partner. Their very sense of self becomes fragile, permeable, and dependent on the external validation provided by their primary relationship. This impedes the crucial developmental task of forming a strong, independent identity before engaging in intimacy versus isolation. If this foundational identity work wasn't sufficiently completed in earlier life stages, the individual enters adult relationships still searching for a definition of self, often finding it in the needs and desires of another. When identity is weak, true intimacy, which requires two distinct individuals forming a reciprocal bond, becomes elusive. The relationship becomes less about two whole people connecting and more about one person trying to complete themselves through the other, or to keep the other from falling apart. This constant fusion prevents genuine individual growth, trapping both partners in a dance where one leads with need and the other follows with endless attempts to fulfill it, leading to a perpetual cycle of imbalance, often characterized by resentment on one side and an unfillable void on the other. This blurred line makes it incredibly difficult to establish and maintain healthy boundaries, because the very idea of an independent self with separate needs feels threatening, potentially leading to perceived abandonment or conflict. If your identity is intertwined with serving another, then setting a boundary feels like cutting off a part of yourself, or worse, severing the connection entirely. The individual fears that expressing their needs will lead to losing the connection they so desperately crave, leading them to avoid necessary conflict and suppress their own desires. This avoidance can become so ingrained that the individual loses touch with what their own boundaries even are, making them susceptible to overgiving and eventual burnout. The inability to say no or to allow a partner to experience discomfort, even when it's for their own growth, is a hallmark of this boundary deficiency. This often manifests as taking on another's emotional stuff, absorbing their stress and anxiety as if it were their own, which quickly leads to emotional exhaustion and resentment. The fear of confrontation often outweighs the internal cost of self-abandonment. The genesis of these patterns is often deeply rooted in our family systems. Imagine a family where there was an unspoken rule that certain emotions, like anger or sadness, were forbidden or dangerous. Or a family where one member struggled with addiction, chronic illness, or severe emotional distress, and the entire family system unconsciously reorganized itself to revolve around managing that person's crisis. Children in such systems often unconsciously take on roles to maintain balance or stability, becoming the responsible one, the peacemaker, the family hero, or the caretaker. These roles, while adaptive for survival in childhood, become deeply constricting in adulthood. The individual caught in the codependency trap might be unconsciously carrying a burden from an ancestor who was deeply neglected, sacrificed their own life for the family, or felt an immense, unreciprocated responsibility for others. There might be an unacknowledged debt, an unexpressed grief, or an unresolved emotional entanglement from previous generations that creates an unconscious pull. For instance, if a grandmother endured immense hardship and always put her family first to the point of self-erasure, a descendant might unconsciously feel compelled to repeat that pattern, believing that their worth is intrinsically linked to sacrifice and self-abnegation. It's a silent, inherited loyalty, a deep systemic entanglement where the individual is acting out an unfinished emotional business for the larger family system, even if that resolution is painful in the present. This concept of systemic orders and entanglements explains why certain patterns recur across generations, sometimes creating a profound sense of obligation that is not consciously understood or chosen, influencing current relationship dynamics from a deeper, unseen level. It's as if the system is trying to restore a balance that was disrupted long ago, using current individuals as unwitting participants in an old drama. Furthermore, cognitive psychology sheds light on how cognitive biases can play a reinforcing role. individuals with codependent patterns might exhibit a confirmation bias, selectively noticing and interpreting information that confirms their role as a caretaker or rescuer, while overlooking instances where their own needs are disregarded, or where their partner is perfectly capable of self-reliance. They might engage in over-responsibility bias, where they feel disproportionately accountable for others' emotions and well-being, internalizing external problems as their own failures. This selective perception and interpretation keep the codependent loop firmly in place. Social comparison theory also plays a role, as individuals might constantly compare their efforts or sacrifices to an idealized version of what a good partner does, always finding themselves falling short and feeling compelled to do more. Our archetypal drives might also play into this, where individuals unconsciously adopt the great mother, martyr, or hero archetypes, striving for validation through endless caretaking or rescuing. These powerful, universal patterns, residing in the collective unconscious, can compel individuals towards self-sacrifice, often at the expense of their own individuation process, the journey of becoming a whole, integrated self. This can involve projecting their own unacknowledged needs or fears onto the partner, attempting to manage their own internal world by controlling an external one, leading to an external locus of control for their happiness and well-being. Reclaiming your narrative strategies. Breaking free from the codependency trap is a profound journey of reclamation, reclaiming your identity, your voice, and your life. It involves a conscious commitment to creating a new, healthier narrative for yourself and your relationships. This is not a quick fix, but a dedicated process of self-discovery and intentional action, moving from unconscious reactivity to conscious choice, allowing for a deeper and more authentic self to emerge. 1. Reclaim your self-awareness and identify your true needs. The first and critical step is to begin listening to your own internal voice again. For those trapped in codependency, this voice has often been silenced for so long that it's barely audible, buried under layers of perceived obligations and others' demands. Start by cultivating mindfulness. Pay deliberate attention to your own physical sensations, tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, lightness in your stomach, or a knot in your gut, and emotions, sadness, resentment, peace, joy, exhaustion. When you feel a surge of anxiety, overwhelming responsibility, or emotional depletion, pause. Instead of immediately reacting or trying to fix something externally, turn inward. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And what do I genuinely need in this very moment? Not what your partner needs, not what society expects, not what you think you should feel, but what you authentically need for your own well-being. This practice of internal attunement, even for just a few minutes each day, starts to rebuild the connection to your authentic self, listening to the whispers of your soul. Journaling can be incredibly powerful here, allowing you a safe, private space to explore your thoughts and feelings without judgment, helping you to differentiate between your desires and those you've absorbed or inherited from others. This deep dive into self-awareness echoes the concepts of individuation found in depth psychology, urging us to integrate all parts of ourselves, including the often neglected personal needs, dormant passions, and stifled desires that have been suppressed for too long. It's about shining a light on your internal landscape to truly understand what drives you, what brings you joy, and what truly replenishes your spirit. 2. Develop a stronger sense of self-differentiation. This means consciously creating distinct emotional and psychological space between your identity and your partner's. It's about disentangling your emotional states from theirs. When your partner is upset, practice observing their emotions without absorbing them as your own. Remind yourself, they are feeling angry and I am feeling calm. Or their sadness is theirs to process, and I can offer support without carrying their burden or feeling responsible for fixing it. This is not about being cold or uncaring. It's about emotional regulation and preserving your own emotional integrity and energy. A highly differentiated individual can remain emotionally connected to others without losing their own distinct self in the process. They can be both connected and autonomous. To foster this, actively engage in activities solely for yourself. Hobbies, friendships, learning new skills, or simply solitary pursuits that bring you joy, a sense of accomplishment, and define your unique personhood, independent of your partner or relationship. This reinforces your distinct identity and reminds you of your inherent value beyond your role as a partner or caretaker. It's like slowly and gently untangling two intertwined ropes, thread by thread, until each can stand strong on its own, capable of supporting itself before they intertwine by choice. This process is fundamental to moving beyond the intimacy versus isolation developmental stage in a healthy way, allowing for genuine connection from a place of secure selfhood. When you are differentiated, you bring a stronger, more stable foundation to the relationship, akin to building a sound relationship house, where each wall is sturdy on its own, contributing to the overall strength of the structure without being dependent on the other. This resilience means you can weather storms and individual challenges without collapsing into emotional fusion or reactivity, fostering a deeper, more resilient bond. 3. Establish and enforce healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are clear lines that define your personal space, time, energy, and emotional capacity. This is where you practice saying no to what depletes you and yes to what nourishes you. Start small and practice consistently, understanding that setting a boundary is an act of self-respect and self-preservation. Perhaps it's setting a boundary around your personal time. I need an hour to myself when I get home from work before we connect to decompress and transition, or expressing a clear limit on emotional labor. I can listen and offer support for a while, but I can't solve this for you, and I need to prioritize my own energy tonight because I'm feeling drained. Boundaries can be physical, personal space, emotional, not taking on another's feelings, financial, separate finances, or related to time, honoring commitments to yourself. Remember, boundaries are about protecting yourself, not controlling your partner. Communicate them calmly and clearly using I statements, a core tenet of principles of communication that emphasize empathy and needs-based expression. I feel overwhelmed when I take on too much of your stress, and I need to step back to take care of myself. Be prepared for discomfort, as your partner may be unaccustomed to your new stance and may even react with surprise, confusion, or resistance at first. However, consistency and calm communication are key. As research on vulnerability teaches, true connection requires clear boundaries and the courage to uphold them even when it feels uncomfortable or scary. This discomfort is often where real growth and authentic relating truly begin, as both individuals are forced to reevaluate the relational dynamic and build a new foundation of mutual respect. 4. Challenge the rescuer mindset. For those who gravitate towards fixing others, it's crucial to recognize that true support involves empowering your partner, not enabling them. This means allowing your partner to experience their own struggles, to find their own solutions, and to take responsibility for their own emotional well-being. Shift your internal question from "how can I fix this for you?" to "how can I support you as you navigate this for yourself?" This is an act of trust in your partner's own capacity and a vital step in breaking the codependent cycle. It is often the hardest shift, as it means sitting with your own discomfort of not being needed or feeling useful, which can feel like a void or a loss of purpose if your worth has been tied to being a rescuer. This resonates with the idea of love as an active practice rather than a passive feeling, emphasizing love as a choice and commitment that fosters growth for both individuals, not a dependency that stunts it. Insights from therapy often touch on this distinction between genuine help and enabling, highlighting that enabling can inadvertently keep a partner stuck and prevent them from developing their own resilience and autonomy. You're shifting from being a crutch to being a cheerleader, trusting in their ability to walk on their own, even if it means watching them stumble occasionally. This allows for both partners to experience growth and to step into their full capacity. Process unmet emotional needs through healthy channels. Instead of seeking validation or security through excessive caretaking, learn to address those deep unmet needs directly. If you long for consistent reassurance, for instance, ask for it directly from your partner in a healthy way. "I'm feeling a bit insecure today, and it would really help if you could tell me what you appreciate about me and our connection." This is about making clear bids for connection that your partner can easily understand and respond to, shifting from a game of subtle hints, unspoken expectations, or manipulative behaviors to clear, vulnerable communication. If your needs aren't consistently met within your relationship, explore other avenues for support. Trusted friends, supportive family members who foster your independence, not your codependency, and a skilled therapist. This broadens your support system and reduces the immense pressure on one single relationship to fulfill all your emotional requirements. This aligns beautifully with the principles of emotional focus in therapy, where the goal is to articulate and respond to core attachment needs, moving towards a more secure attachment style where you feel safe and confident in your worth. Understanding different ways people express and receive love, such as through quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, or physical touch, can also significantly enhance this communication, ensuring needs are expressed and received in a way that truly connects and fosters perceived appreciation. Recognizing your own primary love languages helps you ask for what you truly need, and recognizing your partner's helps you provide what they truly need, reducing miscommunication and unfulfilled expectations. Engage in conscious communication. Practice clear and empathetic principles of communication that foster understanding and respect, forming the bedrock of a healthy relationship. This goes beyond simply talking. It involves deliberate, mindful interaction. This includes observations, stating what you see or hear without judgment. Focus on objective facts rather than interpretations. Like, when I hear you talk about your work stress every night. Feelings. Expressing your own genuine emotions using I feel statements rather than disguised thoughts, criticisms, or demands. I start to feel overwhelmed and anxious. These are your authentic emotional responses, not accusations. Needs. Identifying the underlying need that isn't being met by the current situation, because I need space to process my own day and to feel a sense of calm in the evenings. This clarifies the root of your feelings without blaming. Making a clear, actionable request, not a vague expectation or a demand that forces compliance. Would you be willing to schedule a specific time for us to talk about work, say for 20 minutes after dinner, or perhaps we could try to decompress separately for an hour before we connect? This structured approach helps you articulate their boundaries and needs without blame, inviting your partner into a constructive dialogue rather than a defensive argument. It's crucial to actively listen to your partner's response, seeking to understand their perspective and emotional landscape. This kind of open, honest dialogue is a key aspect of building a stable relationship structure and avoiding destructive patterns in communication, often categorized as behaviors that erode trust and connection. When conflict inevitably arises, focus on making timely repair attempts. Simple gestures or words that aim to de-escalate tension and reconnect, like a touch, an apology, or a moment of shared humor, to prevent emotional wounds from festering and becoming deep-seated resentment. This commitment to repair is vital for long-term relational health and distinguishes masters of relationships from disasters. 7. Address systemic loyalties and unconscious patterns. For deep-seated codependent patterns linked to family dynamics, consider exploring therapies that incorporate systemic approaches. This could involve individual therapy or specific family constellation work. This kind of work helps to identify and address unconscious loyalties or burdens carried from past generations. By acknowledging and respectfully releasing unconscious loyalties to past family burdens, perhaps an ancestor's unexpressed grief, a hidden family secret that created a need for constant vigilance, or a history of self-sacrifice that necessitated caretaking roles for younger generations, you can break cycles that are not truly your own. This isn't about blaming your family. It's about understanding the deep, often invisible forces that shaped you and consciously choosing a different path, allowing yourself to be free to live your own life more fully. This can be profoundly liberating, allowing you to disentangle from emotional burdens that were never yours to carry in the first place. resonating with the idea of shadow work, where we bring unconscious patterns and inherited energies into conscious awareness for healing and integration. Work on breaking habits and reprogramming the mind by consistently choosing new thoughts and actions can also be incredibly supportive in shifting these ingrained, often unconscious systemic patterns into new, healthier behaviors, creating new neural pathways for connection that support autonomy and mutual respect. This involves consciously identifying limiting beliefs inherited from your lineage and actively replacing them with empowering ones. Cultivate self-compassion and vulnerability. This journey requires immense self-compassion. Recognize that these patterns were often survival strategies, developed in challenging circumstances, a testament to your resilience and adaptability, not a flaw or a weakness. Be gentle with yourself as you learn new ways of relating and encounter inevitable setbacks. As research on vulnerability emphasizes, true courage lies in vulnerability, the willingness to be seen and known for who you truly are, imperfections and all. It takes immense courage to show up authentically, express your needs, and allow yourself to be seen even with your imperfections. This courage is what ultimately fosters genuine connection and deeper intimacy. Practical strategies for initiating action or shifting emotional states can be powerful tools for overcoming the inertia of old patterns and initiating new, courageous actions towards self-care and self-worth. Consider the importance of proactively setting personal standards for how you wish to be treated and the kind of relationship you want to cultivate, rather than passively reacting to others' needs. Building strong self-worth is foundational to this process, allowing you to approach relationships from a place of wholeness and abundance, rather than neediness or scarcity. This involves actively building your self-esteem and confidence in your own value, independent of how others perceive you, and celebrating small victories along the way. Your journey of self-discovery and reclaiming your personal power is a profound act of love for yourself and ultimately for your relationships. Conclusion: empowerment and reflection. The journey out of the codependency trap is a courageous path towards self-reclamation. It's about dismantling the belief that your worth is measured by how much you give or sacrifice, and replacing it with the profound truth that your worth is inherent, simply because you exist. By understanding your unmet emotional needs, cultivating a strong sense of self-differentiation, and establishing healthy boundaries, you can transform relationships from draining entanglements into spaces of mutual growth and authentic connection. This path demands patience, compassion for yourself, and the willingness to navigate discomfort, but the reward is immense. A life where you are fully present, authentically expressed, and capable of fostering relationships that truly nourish and uplift you. It's about creating love threads that are strong, flexible, and beautifully intertwined without ever losing their individual integrity. As explorations of modern intimacy often highlight, relationships thrive not on fusion, but on the delicate balance between connection and individual autonomy, a concept also championed in discussions of ethical, transformative love, which emphasizes conscious loving relationships beyond mere romantic ideals. The neuroscience of love and connection, with insights from biological anthropology on brain chemistry and evolutionary drives, and the integration of neuroscience, arousal regulation, and attachment theory, further illuminates how our brains are wired for secure, balanced bonds, not enmeshment or self-erasure. This scientific understanding reinforces the profound human need for both connection and individuality, showing that truly thriving relationships are built on two whole individuals, not halves trying to complete each other. Have you recognized yourself or a pattern you've experienced in the codependency trap? What steps are you taking, or what insights have you gained on your journey to reclaim your identity and set healthier boundaries? Share your experiences and reflections in the comments below, and let's continue to unravel the heart of modern connection, one insightful thread at a time.